I am a robot. Today we're gonna start working on the AIs of our game. This video is probably going to be packed with a lot of stuff to do, but we're not gonna have much to show by the end, because we might have the AI skipping their turns. I think that's what we are aiming for. Yeah, that's not a lot. But at least we should have all the groundworks done, and we're gonna focus on the more complicated aspect of the AI in the next few videos. But yeah, for today we're gonna keep it simple, so let's get to it. So in Unreal, the first thing I'm gonna do is start by importing a few textures that we're gonna use to debug our AI. So I'm gonna go in my art texture in UI folder, and I'm going to import all those textures. They are going to be available on Patreon, but you can copy them. They are pretty simple to copy, and here they are. So first I have an icon that tells me that this is an AI. So I have a little robot right here. Then I have a bracket telling me that it's the beginning of the turns. Then I have an icon telling me that the unit is looking for a spell to cast, an icon telling me that the unit is trying to move to the location where it has to go to cast the spell, an icon telling me that the unit is casting the spell. Then once the spell is casted, the unit is going to look where it wants to end its turn, then it's going to move to that location, so I have an icon for that, and then I have a bracket telling me that the unit ends its turn. Okay, so these are all the icons we're gonna use today to debug our AI. And now the next step is to tell which units are AIs and which ones are not, because in our game we have a bunch of units on the grid. We want to decide, okay, that one you are an AI, that one you're not, this one yes, this one no. So the way we're going to do that is by spawning another object on top of that unit, telling it, okay, you are an AI. That object is also going to be used to execute all the AI logic, because every unit might have a different AI, so we're going to spawn a different AI depending on the logic we want to use for that unit. But first we need to create that object, because we can't spawn it if we don't have it. So let's go in the blueprints. I'm going to close my art folder. In my units, I'm going to create a new folder, which I'm going to name AI. And inside that folder, I'm going to create myself a new blueprint class. So blueprint class of type actor, which I'm going to name BP underscore unit AI. So we're going to spawn that blueprint on top of all the units in the game that we want them to be AIs. And that blueprint is going to handle all the logic. And also, since I want to easily be able to identify which units are AI and which ones are not, I'm just going to create myself a widget blueprint also. So user interface, widget blueprint, I'm going to name it W underscore unit AI, and we're gonna add the little icon on top of the head of all of our units that are AIs, the little robot icon that we imported. And we're actually going to start with that because it's more fun when we can see what we are doing. So let's open the widget first. And actually here I'm not gonna do much. I'm just going to start by replacing the canvas panel with an overlay. So replace with overlay. I'm going to grab an image and drop it inside the canvas. I'm going to center it in the middle right here. I'm going to change the image to the new icon AI that we imported. So TX icon AI right here. And I'm going to make the size 60 by 60. Here we go. That's it. Now we can compile and save and close the widget because we're done with it. We're gonna go add it inside the BP unit AI. So let's open that one now. And here I'm gonna go in the viewport to add myself a new widget component, and here's mine. So here on the right we can see all the settings that I've changed. So I changed the location to 250 because I want it to be above the head of the unit, same as the health bar. Then I have my space, which is a screen space, same thing as the health bar. The widget class is W underscore unit AI. The draw size is 100 by 100. And then in my layers I had to change the widget component screen layer 1 right here to make it minus 101. That way it's hidden behind the health bar, not in front of it. But now here in the viewport we don't really see the result because it is in screen space. But what we can do if we want to see if it works, I'm just gonna drop the BP unit AI somewhere in the level, it doesn't really matter, and then I'm gonna press play just to see, okay, I have my AI icon right here, that is right there, I have my little robot head, yay, it works, good. Now I'm just gonna start up and delete that blueprint because we don't want it to be in the world by default. And now we're gonna go spawn that blueprint on top of all the units we want to be controlled by AI. But before doing that, I'm gonna start by adding a variable inside the unit just so it remembers which AI is associated with him. So I'm gonna go in my unit, BP unit, and I'm going to create myself a new variable. I named it AI, and I changed the variable type to BP unit AI, which is the new blueprint we just created. And while we're here, I'm just going to create myself a new function, which I'm gonna name set unit AI, and we're gonna use that function to set our variable first. So set the variable right here, and then after that, we're gonna check if the variable is valid. And then if the input we received is valid, we're just going to also attach it to the unit. That way it's going to be snapped on top of the unit. So let's attach the AI on top of self, which is the unit because we are in the unit right now. now, and make sure to snap the location, rotation, and scale. That way they are exactly on top of the unit. Perfect. Now we can save this. We're done with the unit for now. We're just going to go in the combat system to spawn the AI and attach it to the unit by calling this function. So let's go in the combat system, blueprint core combat, open combat system. And we're going to create a new function to indicate if we want the unit to use a AI or not. So here it is. I have my new function set unit use AI. We fitted the unit we want to set, and also if we are using an AI or not for that unit. Then for the logic, it's pretty simple. We have to first check, okay, do we want to use a AI? If it's the case, well, we're going to check, okay, is there already an AI on you? Yes, no. And if there's not, well, we're just going to spawn a new one. So spawn actor BP unit AI, here it is. So we create a new AI, and then we just have to assign it to the unit. So we can simply do a set unit AI like that on the unit, feeding it the new AI we just created. And in the case that we don't want to use a AI, we're going to do the opposite. So we're just going to start by checking if the unit AI is already valid. So if there's an AI object spawn on the unit, and if it's the case, well, we're just going to destroy it because we don't want it to have any more impact on the game anymore. So we're just going to destroy the actor. And once that's done, we're just going to also call the set unit AI, but this time we're not going to feed anything. That way it's just going to reset it to nothing. And now the last thing we have to do is to just call this function when we are adding the unit on top of the grid. So we're going to add the units on the grid and then specify if we want them to use AI or not. So let's go in the add unit in combat function, and we're gonna go all the way at the end right here. So after adding the unit on top of the grid, we're just going to tell it, okay, are you using an AI or not? And now for the variable, first the unit is super simple. We already have it right here, so we can just feed it like so. And then for the use AI, well, we don't have that right now in this function. So what I'm going to do is just drag from the use AI all the way to the beginning just to create the new variable like this. Then I'm just going to disconnect it and go all the way back at the end, compile, and now I can just call it like that. So use AI, here we go, get use AI, here we go. So now the variables are fed to the function, but the variable are never fed to this function right here, add unit in combat. So let's go modify the action and the widget so they are feeding the use AI variable when they are calling this function. So let's go in the player action, combat setup, and open add remove unit from combat. Here we're going to create a new variable for it, so new variable, and I'm going to name it use AI, and then I'm going to take the variable and connect it like that. So now the value is sent to the combat system, but we just need to set this variable inside the action, and that's going to be inside the debug menu with the button. So let's go in entry. I'm going to go in my debug menu this time, in my actions, and I'm going to open button action, add remove unit from combat, and in there we're going to add a new checkbox, and then we're going to feed the value to the action. So here it is. I have my new checkbox, which I named checkbox underscore use AI. It's a pretty simple checkbox. I just changed a few settings on the right here if you want to copy them. And then inside that checkbox, I have a simple text component, which is written use AI. That way we know what the checkbox is for. So here it is, I have the new checkbox. Now I'm going to select it and go in the graph. With the checkbox selected on the left, I can click on the green button to implement the new event, which is called every time we check or uncheck the checkbox. So here it is, and I connected it with all the other ones the same way we did for all the other action. And then I'm going to do the visibility, so I'm just going to connect my checkbox here and there. That way it's going to be either visible or collapsed with the other components. And then I'm going to go all the way at the end to feed the information to the action. So I have my action right here. I can just simply do a set use AI like that, feeding it the value of the checkbox if it is checked or not. Perfect. Now we can compile and save, and we should see the result in the game. And to test that, it's pretty simple. We just have to add a few units on the grid. So here we go. I'm adding a few of them, and we can see that they don't have the robot head above the health bar because they are not marked as AI. But if I check the use AI checkbox, now if I spawn some units, they should have the robot head. And if we check in the actor list on the right here, I'm going to scroll all the way down, we can see that we have a few unit AI spawned in the game, and these components are going to be used to handle the logic of the AI, and it should work with all the unit types. So I can spawn a few slimes here, I can change their colors, it should not be an issue. Same thing if I spawn a few chickens, we can see that they are now AI, and if I delete a unit that was not AI and replace it by one that is AI, we can see that now the robot appears on top of its head. So yeah, it seems to work. Good, but now we need to use that information when we play the unit's turn, because right now we just display a robot head above its head. We don't change anything in the logic. So let's go do that. I'm gonna stop and do this. And we're going to start in the BP unit AI. So here, what do we want to do? Well, we just want to wait a few seconds and then go to the next unit. That way we're going to see that the flow works. We don't want to add too much code right now. We just want to make sure that the flow works first. So let's do that. I'm going to start by creating myself a new function right here, AI play turn. We're going to call this function when we want to execute the AI for that unit. And then once the AI is done executing its logic, it's just going to also call the function AI end turn. So we have the function that starts the turn and the function that ends the turn. And in between those two functions, so from the start to the end of the turn, we're just going to add a delay. That way the unit is going to wait a little bit and then skip its turn. But we can't add a delay inside a function. We have to go through an event in the event graph. So let's go back in the event graph. But actually, we're going to add a bunch of events that are going to be based on a bunch of delays or callbacks or things like that in the whole flow of the unit. So instead of just adding them all in the event graph, I think it will be a little bit cleaner to create ourselves a new event graph. So create a new graph right here. In my case, I named it AI flow. That one is going to only contains the nodes that are associated with the flow of the AI. So all the states the AI is going to go through before ending its flow. So in there, I'm going to start by my new event right here, run AI logic. So it's going to be the start of the AI. It's going to start right here. And then what we want to do is just simply add a small delay just to wait 0.2 seconds. And then we're going to simply call the AI end turn function. So the AI is going to start, it's going to run right here, it's going to wait and then call the end turn. Now we just have to go call this event inside the AI play turn. So let's go back in the AI play turn and call the run event logic. So we call the AI play turn, it's running the AI logic. Once it's done, it's going to call the AI end turn. And actually the logic is not that complicated. We're going to do the exact same thing we do when we click on the button next unit in the user interface. So we are simply going to call the event next unit inside the combat system. But first we need a reference to the combat system. So create a new variable right here. I named it combat system and it is of type BP combat system. And now that we have the variable, we can simply take it and call the function next unit inside the combat system, which is going to go to the next unit. So to recap quickly, every time we want to ask AI to play its turn, we're going to call the AI play turn function right here. It's going to run the AI logic right here in the second event graph we created in the AI flow event graph right here. Right now we are waiting for a delay, but we're going to have way more code by the end of the video. And then once it's done doing everything, we're just going to call the AI end turn, which is going to call the next unit inside the combat system. But if we try to run this right now, it will not work because the combat system variable is never set. So we're going to set it. And the easiest way to set it, since we are creating the AI inside the combat system, is to make this variable instance editable and exposed on spawn. That way we're going to set it automatically when we spawn the object. And that's exactly the next step. So let's go in the combat system right here. I'm going to go in the function set unit use AI, and inside it we have the spawn actor right here, which I'm simply going to refresh to have access to my combat system variable, which I can simply feed itself because I'm in the combat system right now. So here we go. Now we just have to go ask the AI to play its turn, and then we're gonna see the result in the game. So let's go in the next unit function right here, and at the end of the function, after doing all that right here, we're gonna start the unit's turn, and then we're gonna check, okay, does the unit have an AI? If so, it's going to be valid, and if it's the case, we're just going to call the function AI play turn, asking it to play its turn. Perfect, now let's compile save and go see how it looks. So to test that, I'm going to add myself one unit and then a bunch of AI. So let's say in another team, I'm going to add, let's say, a bunch of slimes like that. Here we go. So now if I start my combat, I should be able to move my unit as usual. But if I end my turn, all the AI should play their turn, skip their turn one by one, and then come back to myself. Good. So the flow seemed to work, and come back to myself. Okay, but there's a few issues right here right now. The first one is that we are never disabling the input of the player, so technically I could move the units during their turn if I'm fast enough, because the delay is super short, but if I click fast enough, I'm able to move the unit during their turn, and I'm also able to select the spells, which is not what we want. We don't want the player to select which spell the AI want to play. That doesn't make sense. And worse, I can skip my turn during playing the other turns, and it messes up everything. Here we go. Now all the AIs are playing at the same time, and that's not good. So yeah, we have a few issues to fix. Actually, we have to hide the spell bar, we have to hide the end turn button for sure, and we also just have to disable the player inputs. And to do that, well, we're going to create a new action that is just going to be responsible to wait. We're just gonna have an action for the player to wait its turn before playing. So let's go do that. I'm gonna go in my action, I'm gonna stop the game, I'm gonna go in my action combat and duplicate the action move, action combat move, and rename it action CBT wait for turn. So we're gonna ask the player to wait its turn before playing again. Let's open that action. We're gonna modify a few things, we're gonna keep a few things, but we're also going to modify it just so it works and the player cannot interfere with the AI's turn. And actually the first thing that's gonna change is the design, because we want to change the way the player is able to interact with the game when it's not his turn. So the first thing is that in the default state we don't want to display anything. Before we were displaying the reachables, right now we don't care about them anymore. And then the only thing we want the player to be able to do when it's not his turn is to wait. And actually if he moves his mouse over another unit, we can display the reachable. Why not? It doesn't break anything, so why not doing that? But other than that, we're not gonna do anything else. We're not gonna cast a spell, ask a unit to move, do anything. We're just going to display the reachable. So that's the only thing the player can do during the AI's turn. Okay, now we removed a bunch of features from the design. Let's remove them from the code also. So let's just keep what is related to the reachable. So this one right here, generate reachable, that's good. On pathfinding completed reachable, that's good also. We want to be able to display the reachables, but we don't want to ask the unit to move. So we don't need to generate a path anymore. We don't need to know when a path was generated because we're never going to ask for a path. Then we're also not interested by the unit started and finished walking because we're never going to ask it to move. And then we don't need the execute action because the player is not going to be able to click on the grid while it's not its turn. Then we can also delete the generated path because we don't need it, and also the variable is unit walking. We don't need it anymore either. Here we go. Now we just have the functions and variable related to the reachables. And now we have a few errors to fix. So here the first ones are just related to the callbacks because we deleted all the functions that were associated to them, but we don't need them anymore. So let's just delete all that. And right here at the end we have the generate reachable. We don't want to generate the reachable by default anymore. So let's just delete that too. So here is the new begin play. It's super small and it's way cleaner. And we're also going to clean the end play because we don't want to clear the state from is in path because we're never going to add anything to the is in path with just the reachable. So let's delete that one also. Here we go. Now we can compile. Okay, we just have two new errors to fix and they are inside the generate reachables, I think. Oh, actually that's not true, but while we're here, we're just going to change a little something. Right here, before calling the find path function, we're just going to make sure that the current unit for reachable is valid because it's possible that the player doesn't over anything. So in that case, we don't want to look for a path because the unit doesn't exist. So we're never going to be able to find a path for that unit because there's no unit there. So let's just check if it is valid before calling the find path function. Perfect. Now we're gonna compile and go to the next function. So the onPathFinding completed reachable right here. Right here we have a little branch that we don't need anymore. So let's just delete the branch like that. And now we can compile and go to the next function, which is the execute over action. And the bug is right here. We are trying to call the generate path, which we don't have anymore. So let's delete that. And actually I'm just going to remove the branch also. So here we go. And I think that's gonna be it. If I compile save, here we go, I don't have any errors anymore. And if I go in the game, actually I need to use that action first. So let's go do that. I'm gonna go add the action in my player actions. So in the player, let's open the VP player actions and we're gonna go in the function on unit turn started. So at the beginning of a unit's turn, right now what we're doing is setting the player to combat move. So the player is ready to move the unit that is currently playing, but we don't want to do that all the time. We don't want to do that when it's not the player's turn, when it's an AI that plays the game. So we're just going to move that code out of the way and I'm just going to add an is valid at the beginning right here. So if the AI of the current unit is not valid, okay, then we want the player to be able to control it. So we're gonna set the action to combat move. That's simple, that's super easy. But if the unit AI is valid, in that case we want the player to be in standby. So what we're gonna do is just checking first if the player is not currently in standby. So if the current action is not equal to action CBT wait for turn, so if the player is not currently waiting, then we're going to set the selected action to wait for turn. Here we go. So now the player is just going to wait until it's his next turn, and then when when it's its next turn, the AI is going to be invalid and then it's going to go back to the previous action and everything should work as before. But now we have one other thing to change, and it is inside the on-unit turn ended. So at the end of the unit's turn, right now what we do is just deselect the selected action every turn. So every time the unit ends its turn, we are deselecting the action, and we don't want to do that anymore. If the player is waiting, well, we don't want to cancel that wait to just restart the wait afterwards. So what we're going to do is just remove the function call from here. So let's cut it, and then I'm going to go paste it inside the on combat ended instead. So at the end of the combat, now we're going to deselect every action that is currently selected. So that way the player is going to wait, it's going to wait, keep waiting, okay, now it's turn to play, it's going to play its turn, and then it's just going to go back in wait. It's never going to go through the no action selected and deselect the current action and everything. It's just going to wait until the end of the combat, and once the combat is over, now it's just going to deselect everything. Perfect. Now we should be able to go back in the game, and we should not be able to interfere with the unit say hi. So let's spawn a bunch of AI. So I'm gonna spawn a bunch of prints this time, why not, and start a combat. Okay, my turn to play, that's good. I'm going to end my turn. Okay, I don't see the reachable, so that's good because I'm hiding them. I'm not showing the reachable during their turn by default. I'm just showing the reachable when I'm moving my mouse over the unit, and it seems to work. So yeah, here we go. Now I can display all the reachables of all the units. I can still move my unit, so that's good. And if it's not my turn, well, I cannot move the other unit, so that's good. I cannot cast their spell. We can see that on the spell bar right here. I cannot select any spell, so that's good. And I can still click on the enter button. Okay, that's bad. I can still mess up with the process, and we can see, yeah, it freaks everything up, and that's not good. And actually, I think that if I press my number on the keyboard, yeah, it breaks stuff. So we have to remove the numbers on the keyboard, and we also have to disable the enter button. So let's go do that. And let's start by disabling the input numbers. So that's going to be in the BP player action, in the event graph, right here in the event any key. We are checking if we are in combat and we are not finishing the combat. We're going to add another condition to that. So let's add a new pin right here, and the condition is going to be that the current unit is equal to the selected unit. So if the unit that is currently playing in the game is equal to the selected unit, it means that we can cast the spell, otherwise we can't. So let's compile save, and now the input numbers should be fixed. Add a few units in the game, one of them that is going to be AI, and now if I play my turn and I press the numbers on the keyboard, we can see that it doesn't break the game, but when the unit's turn starts again, I can cast my spell as before. Good, so that works. Okay, let's end turn, and now what we're going to do is just disable the end turn button, so stop. And that's going to be inside the widget combat. So let's go in core widget. Here it is, w_combat. And in here, I'm going to simply hide the borders that contain the spell bar right here, and also the border that contains the end turn button. So I'm just going to start by renaming them. So border underscore end turn, and then border underscore spells right here. And once they are renamed, I can check the isVariable checkbox in the top right corner. So isVariable, and now we're gonna go hide them in the code. So let's go in the graph, and we're gonna do that right here in the construct. And it's actually not that difficult to do. We're just going to have to hook ourselves to the callback on unit turn started right here. So every time a new unit is going to start its turn, we're gonna either show or hide the components depending if the unit is controlled by a AI or not. So here it is. I have my two components, the border end turn and border spell. I'm toggling their visibility, and to decide which visibility we want to use, we're just going to check if the AI of the unit that is going to play is valid. If the AI is valid, well, we want to hide those, so I'm just going to make them hidden. Otherwise, we're just going to make them visible, so the player has access to all the buttons. Okay, let's compile save and go see how it looks in the game. I'm going to add myself one unit as usual and a bunch of AI. So here we go. I have a bunch of chickens. Now, if I start my turn, I have my spells bar at the bottom and it works, and I have my end turn button and it works also, so that's good. Now all the units are playing their turn. Here we go, back to me. Now I'm able to cast my spell as usual and end my turn. Otherwise, the button is hidden during their turn, so that's good. I can skip my turn, and I cannot skip my turn multiple times, so that's pretty good. Okay, good. So it seems to work. It fixed all the issues, but there's another one actually. If I end my turn, we can see on the right that the border, the blue border around the selected unit, the current unit, disappears when I end my turn. I don't know which unit's turn it is, so we have to fix that also. So let's go do that. So let's go see what's happening. I think it is inside the unit button, if I'm not wrong. So in units, in widget, I'm going to open button underscore unit, because this is the button that contains the outline, the blue outline when the unit selected is selected. So, okay, let's go in the graph to see what's happening. So if I look at the code right here, we can see that we are binding ourselves to the onUnit selected change. So when we are selecting the unit, we are calling this function that displays the blue border around the button. But that's the issue right now. We're not selecting the unit anymore. We're just going to select the units that are controllable by the player, not the AI. So that's why they are not displayed in the bar. So, okay, let's fix that. I think the best way to do that is just to add a new state to the unit. That way we can know, okay, that unit is active in combat. It's the current unit that is currently playing, even though it's not selected. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go start by the BP unit, and we're going to create a new variable for that new state. I named it is active in combat, and we're actually going to do the same thing we did for the is selected. So we're going to update the unit's visual, and we're also going to call a callback to notify the rest of the game. So let's start with the callback. I'm going to create myself a new event dispatcher right here on unit active in combat changed, and same as for the selected, I'm feeding it the unit as input. Then we're going to need a new function to set that new variable. So create a new function right here, set is active in combat. Here we go. It's just a simple function that receives a boolean as input that we're going to use to set our variable like that. Perfect. So now we have a function that sets our variable. Once that variable is done, we're going to update the visual of the unit because we're going to do the same thing we did for the selected. We're going to change the color and the highlight of the unit, and then we can simply call the callback to notify the rest of the game. Good. So now the variable is set, we are notifying the rest of the game, we just need to update the visual of the unit. So let's go in there, and in there what we were doing is just setting the color to blue and highlighting it a little bit when we are selecting the unit. So when the unit is selected, we're gonna keep doing the same thing, but we're also going to do it when the unit is active in combat. So here I'm going to disconnect my selected and add the is active in combat. So if the unit is selected or if the unit is active in combat, we're going to make it a little bit blue, and then if the unit is selected or is active in combat, we're also going to make it brighter. Good. So now we know which unit is active in combat. We just need to go call our function to make it active in combat because now it's never called, and we're going to do that inside the turn started right here. So at the beginning of the unit's turn, we're going to make it active in combat because that's the beginning of its turn. So it starts to be active, and then in turn ended, we're going to make it not active anymore. So at the beginning of turn ended right here, we're just going to make the unit not active in combat by calling our new function. Good. Now we have a new state, and we also have a new callback that notifies us when the state changes. So let's go hook ourselves to that new state and new callback in the button unit. So in there, I'm gonna go at the beginning right here in the pre-construct. This is where we are hooking ourselves to the onUnit selected change, and we're gonna do the same thing but for the new callback. So onUnit active in combat changes. Okay, good. We're gonna connect the event to the same event as the unselected change. So the event right here. So both of them are going to go through the same event, which is fine in our case because we want to handle them the same way. So let's go see how that event looks. I'm gonna go right here at the bottom. It is this one right here, onUnit selected changed. Right here we are feeding the is selected to our blue border to decide if we want to display it or not, and we're gonna do the same thing. That's for the color. So I'm just going to check if we are selected or also active in combat. In either case, we want to display the blue border, and that should fix the issue. So let's go see how it looks in the game. Let's add a few units on the grid and then a few AIs to see if the border works. Here we go. I have my blue border on my unit. I have my blue border on my second unit. And now if I skip my turn, here we go. The blue borders goes to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And we can see that it seems to work. And also I think that the units are becoming blue on the grid also. So that's pretty great. Okay, good. So now we know which unit is currently playing. That's good. Oh, actually, while we're here, I had a few comments telling me that this bar right here, the units turn bar, was pretty unstable depending on how many units you spawned in the game. And that's actually just because of the scroll box. So let's go see in the widget. So in combat widgets, let's open the unit turn bar. I'm going to show you what you can do to fix it. And actually, you don't have much to do. You just have to make sure that the size box first is set properly, so you have the right dimensions you want for the size box. And then for the scroll box, what you can do if it's always flickering, you can simply check the always show scroll bar checkbox right here. That way, the scroll bar is always going to be visible and it's not going to hide itself every time a unit was removed or added from it. So here we go. And now, before ending the video, we're gonna do a little bit more setup to be ready for the next few videos. And actually, we're gonna use the textures we imported at the beginning because we still didn't do that. I'm gonna start by going in my unit AI right here, right next to the BP unit AI, and I'm going to create myself a new enum. So in Blueprint enumeration, which I'm gonna name e_unit AI state. And we're gonna use that enum to build a list of all the states that my units are going to go through while playing their turns. And here they are. So first I have a none state at the beginning, so the unit is not doing anything. Then it's going to start its turn, so the start turn state. Then the first thing it's going to do, it's going to decide which spell it wants to cast this turn, so decide which spell to cast. And then once the spell is decided, it's going to move to that location, so move to spell casting location. Then the unit is going to cast its spell, so cast spell. Then after casting the spell, the unit is going to decide where to go to end the turn, so it's going to be the state, decide where to end turn. And then after that, it's going to move to that location, so move to end turn location. And once the unit is at the right place, it's going to end its turn, so end turn. Here we go. So these are all the states that the units are going to go through while playing their turn. And now we're gonna go use them in the BP unit AI. So right here, I'm going to create myself a new variable, which I named AI state, and it is of type eUnit AI state, which is the enum we just created. And actually, I'm also going to create myself an event dispatcher to notify the rest of the game when the AI state changes. So on AI state changed right here, and I'm feeding it the unit AI. So unit AI of type BP unit AI. Good. Now, to set the AI state, we're gonna need a new function, but this time I'm not gonna use a new function. We're gonna use a macro instead, because I want to be able to add a delay in the macro, a delay in the flow, just so we can more easily debug it. So I'm going to create myself a new macro. Here it is, set AI state with delay, and then the logic is going to be pretty straightforward. We're gonna set the state. So here we go. I have the state that I receive as input. I'm setting the state as usual, and then once that's done, well, we can just call the callback. So we set the state, we notify the rest of the game that the state changed. That's good, that's super easy. And then we just have to add ourselves a little delay to be able to debug the unit AI more easily, otherwise the AI is going to play way too fast. So that's why we are adding a delay, just so it pauses a little bit and then we can debug it. And actually I'm going to promote the duration to a local, not a local, but to a variable right here, delay between states, which is going to be a float, and we're gonna use that to modify the delay between state in the debug widget. Perfect. So now the macro is created and we have a way to set the state. So let's go do that. I'm gonna do it in the AI flow for now. Okay, so get ready because there's a lot that's gonna change. So the first thing I'm gonna do is delete those two nodes because we don't need them anymore. We're gonna replace them by a little bit more complicated logic. And then we're going to create events for all the states that are inside our enum. So let's start with the first one and decide which spell to cast right here. And for each those events, I'm also going to create a second event with the same name, but adding _done at the end. So we're gonna call the first event. We're gonna process all the logic. It can be as long as you want. It can be 10 minutes if we want to. And then once that's done, we're gonna call the done. That way it's going to continue the flow only when the process is 100% completed. That way, let's say if you cast a spell that takes 10 seconds to cast, we can wait 10 seconds and then go to the next step. That's why I'm splitting them into two functions like that. And we're gonna do that for all the other states. So let's go to the next state, move to spellcasting location. Here we go. I'm moving to the spellcasting location, and once I'm done, I'm calling the move to spellcasting location _done. And then next one, cast spell _done. Decide where to enter, decide where to enter _done. And finally, move to enter location _done. And in between those events, there will be a lot of logic. But for today, we're going to keep it super simple. We're gonna start by just setting the states. So let's do that. Super easy. Let's set the states. So in decide which spell to cast, I'm setting my state to decide which spell to cast. Same thing for the next one. So move to spellcasting location, etc., etc., etc. So same thing. And then we wait for a delay. And once that delay is done, then we're gonna continue with the flow. So once I'm done deciding which spell to cast, my state is set, my calculations are done, then I can just simply call the decide which spell to cast _done right here to continue the rest of the flow. And in this case, this function doesn't have to do anything right now. It's just going to go to the next line, but in the future, we might add multiple checks to decide, okay, which is the next step after doing that. But in this case, I don't have any check to do for now, so I'm just going to call the move spellcasting location, which is the one on the next line. And we're going to continue that until the flow is over. So move to spellcasting location underscore done once we're done doing the logic. And then we can simply go to the next step, which is cast spell. So I'm going to cast my spell. Once it's done, I'm calling the done function. Once it's done, I'm going to the next line. So decide where to end turn. Once it's done, calling this one, this move to end turn location. Once I'm decided, I'm calling the event, I'm moving to that location, and once I'm done, I'm done. I'm calling this last event right here, which is the end of the flow. But first, before doing the end of the logic right here, I'm just going to do the beginning of the logic, which is simply to set the state to start turn. So my unit is starting its turn right here, and then I'm going to start the flow. So decide which spell to cast, which is the one on the second line right here. And finally, at the end, I'm just going to set my state to end turn and call my AI end turn function right here. So yeah, this looks like it's a big mess, but actually it's not that big of a mess. It's just pretty much just one line of code that is just splitted on multiple lines. So it starts here and then goes there, goes there, goes there. It's like reading a book. So it's not that complex. And in the final flow, it's actually going to be way more complicated than that, because let's say the unit just casted a spell. Okay, now what does it do? Does it go to the move action, or does it tries to cast a spell again? Does it want to change which spell to cast? Does it wants to do anything else? So that's why I'm splitting all those actions into different events. It's like building, let's say, a behavior tree. But since our game is more turn-based and there's a lot of steps to do, I think it will be simpler for us to just do it in Blueprint instead of going through a behavior tree. But we can always move the logic later if we change our mind. But anyway, later on this logic is going to be way more complex. For now, it's just like reading a book. So left to right, top to bottom, here we go, here we go, here we go. And now we're just going to test to make sure that the flow actually works. So to do that, I'm gonna start by adding a few extra debug info in the debug menu. So let's go do that. I'm gonna go in my debug menu, in my tabs, and I'm actually just going to do them directly inside the tab combat right here. So let's open that one. And here I actually created myself a completely new category right here, unit AI. I actually duplicated the themes right here and deleted what I didn't need and just kept what I wanted. And now I have my new category right here. So same as the other one, I have the expandable area. I have first a border, then the expandable area. You can see all the settings that I used on the right. I'm going to go through all the other components. And then inside it, I have my overlay and a simple text saying that it is the unit AI category. Then inside that, I have a border for a darker background. I have a vertical box because I have two rows of components. The first row is simply a spin box with name, which I named the spin box underscore with name underscore delay between states, and make sure that this one is a variable because we want to feed that value to our AI because it's going to control the delay between the states. And then under that one, I have an horizontal box, which simply contains a simple text on the left right here, states, because it indicates that all the images that are going to spawn on the right are the states of our units that is currently playing. And then on the right, I have my scale box. You can see the setting that I used on the right. This is just so the icons are scaled down to fit in that little row right here. And then I have an horizontal box. That one is important to make it a variable in the top right corner and also change its name so it makes sense. In my case, I named it hbox underscore unit AI states. Here we go. So that's it for all the components. Now we're gonna go use those components in the graph. So let's go in there. And actually, the first thing I'm gonna do is create myself a new function. So I have a new function right here on AI state changed. Here we go. And I'm feeding it the unit AI as input. And we're going to use this function to populate our horizontal box with all the states of the current unit. So let's do that. First thing, I'm going to check if the unit AI we received as input is valid. Otherwise, we can't really get the current state because it doesn't exist. So let's just ignore that one. And then we just have to create an image. We're going to create an image for each state every time the unit changes state. So let's create an image right here. So it is a function that is named construct object from class, which I just set the class to an image. And that gives us an image. So I have an image right here. It's nice, it's white, there's nothing written on it. So let's write something on the image. So let's just do a set brush from texture. So we're going to feed it one texture, one of the texture we imported at the beginning. And to select which texture we want to feed it, well, we're gonna use a select. So I'm going to take the current AI state of my unit AI that I receive as input, and I'm going to do a select on it to decide which texture I want to use. All the texture are associated with the state. So these are all the texture we imported at the beginning. So now we're taking the texture and we're putting it on top of the image. Perfect. We have an image with a texture. And the next step is just to set its size because right now it's way too big. So let's just scale it down a little bit to 24 by 24. I think it makes sense. It doesn't really matter. And then once we have the image with the right size, it's just time to put it inside the horizontal box. Here we go. So we're just gonna do a add child on top of the horizontal box just to add the image inside it. Here we go. Now we are adding images inside the horizontal box. That's it. The other thing I'm going to do is just when we are receiving a unit AI that is not valid, I'm just going to clear all the images we've created. So I'm just going to clear the children of the horizontal box. That way, it's just going to be clean every time we receive an invalid AI. I think it makes sense and it's going to help us debug the game. And now for the last thing I want to do in this function, I'm just going to move on the right a little bit and we're just going to feed the value of the spin box to the unit AI. So on the unit AI, I'm doing a set delay between states and I'm going to feed it the value of the spin box. Perfect. Now we're done with the logic of the function. We just have to go call it and we're going to do that in the event graph. In the event graph right here, this is where we are hooking ourselves to the callbacks of the combat system. I'm going to do the exact same thing but for the unit AI. But here to hook ourselves to the unit AI, we have to do a little trick. We have to first start by hooking ourselves to the onUnit turn started because we are not aware of all the units that are on the grid at the moment. We don't know which ones have an AI, which one don't. So by hooking ourselves to that one, every time a new unit is going to start its turn, we're going to ask him, okay, do you have an AI? So is your AI valid? If so, I'm going to use it to hook myself to the on-AI state change. So we receive a new unit at the beginning of its turn. We're going to ask him, okay, do you have an AI? Yes, no, yes. Okay, I'm going to use you to update my images in my horizontal box. But if it's not the case, if the AI is not valid, we're simply going to clear the horizontal box. So I'm going to call the on-AI state change. And since I'm not feeding any unit AI to it, it's just going to clear the horizontal box. And I'm actually also going to call this function even if the unit AI is valid because this is a new unit, it's going to start a new turn. So we just want to also clear the horizontal box to start fresh at the beginning of each turn. Perfect, so now we should be able to compile save and see how it looks in the game. Here we go, so here I have all my units on the grid. I have my unit that is not AI and a bunch of new AIs. So now I'm just going to start the combat and see how it looks. It's my turn so I can move around, that's not an issue. Everything works as expected. Then I'm going to end my turn and now we can see that, okay, the units are playing their turn one by one super slowly, and that's just because we are limiting the time they take to think about what they want to do. Right now they are taking 0.2 seconds every time they are doing a new state, but we can tweak that value if we want to debug it, so we can make it even slower if we want to have enough time to see what's happening, or even make it way faster because it's too slow, so let's just make it super fast. Choo. But yeah, anyway, the important is just that we can tweak that value and it's going to help us debug the AI in the next few videos. But anyway, for today I think it's good enough. We did a lot of work even though the units are not moving, but in the next one they are going to move. So I guess that's gonna be it for today and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye bye!